The first change that they mention is that now you can do multiple upgrades at once for weapons. So for example, if you want to upgrade 10 of the same rifle instead of doing it individually 10 times, you can now do all 10 at the same time, which saves a lot of time. After that, they posted that you can now sell way more items that you previously had just as clutter. They mention that now mines, grenades, special weapons, and anything else that you can think of has now been available to be sold. The only thing that you cannot sell is the starter rifle, which you can retire, I think it is called, instead of sell, where you do not get any orders for it. Whereas for any other item, you get a single order for a single one, or it is 10 of that item for one, depending on the item itself. After that, they mentioned that stationary anti-aircraft guns now have a much lower overheating rate, meaning that you can fire much more frequently with that anti-air weapon, as this was a feature left over from when they could fight infantry, as a way to nerf them against that and make them less capable than the machine gun that you could build. And then at the very end, they mention a few other changes, the first one being that the Hispano 20mm gun now has less tracer, making it a more effective weapon. Then they mentioned that the Sturm pistol and the GRB 39 can now be sold, as this was previously a bug, and that a respawn point in the Reich Chancellery map has now been fixed. The day after that, they made another update post where they mentioned two changes. The first one being that aircraft respawn points have now been further reduced in distance from the closest capture point, and that the capture point borderlines have now been reduced in size. After this, the latest news that we have got was on the 17th. The first piece of news on that day was that they temporarily made available the Shosha MG squad for the Soviets in the Moscow campaign, which is a Soviet MG squad which got access to the Shosha machine gun. It is no longer available, as the availability of this squad was between the 17th and the 20th. And the very last news post that they made on the 17th is one titled More of New Enlisted, in which they cover features and additions and changes in general about the Enlisted big update which is coming, which will rework the entire game. The first change that they mention is that weaponry that you use will change the maps and who you fight, depending on what you have and the strength of it. So for example, if you use early war weapons, then you will fight in early war maps and fight people with such early war weapons as well, making it more historical. So for example, if you use just early rifles as the Soviets, then you will most likely just be fighting in the Moscow campaign and maps around that, and the same for the Germans. There is a few exceptions where, for example, they state that as the Japanese do not really have any late war weaponry, they will only be fighting in a early mid area of battle until they get more later war weaponry to use. They then talk about the advanced soldier upgrade changes which are coming, where they mention that whereas now soldiers require leveling up to level 5, where they can then have 5 different abilities added to them, as long as you get enough XP to unlock them, whereas now they say that there is no limit to these abilities somehow, and that it will no longer be random, whereas now you get 3 options to choose, and if you do not like them you have to restart the whole thing to try and get a new ability, whereas now they mention that it is no longer random and that you can choose the abilities, which will be an interesting addition. Not very clear how they'll make it work if there is no ability limit. It will be interesting to see. After this, they mention how new additions will be made to the game. I do not entirely understand it, so I might as well just read it verbatim. New campaigns with new unique locations, squads, weapons and vehicles, as well as new game mechanics will be launched in the format of a global event, in which any commander can participate. During these events you will get upgraded and well-armed squads under your command, and for completing battle tasks, unique rewards that can be received only during these events. And after such events, new weapons and vehicles will be added to the progression trees of the corresponding armies, and missions will be included in the common pool of available maps. Again, I do not really understand what it means entirely, as we also do not have a full understanding of how the system will work. We'll just have to wait and see for this one, I guess. And then at the very end, they mention a few bullet point changes that are being made to the game with this update as well. The first one being that Enlisted will only have a single currency, as they will remove all the bronze and silver orders and such, with a single currency they call silver, which will be used to get everything in the game which you would usually get before with these different orders. They mention that gold orders will still remain, however, and be a part of the battle pass as usual. After this, they also mention that you will get a long-awaited reward for joining a random side in a battle. They do not mention what it is, but that you will be rewarded somehow. Then after that, they mention that tougher measures will be implemented against deserters. Again, nothing explained there, just that something will happen in the future with that. Then after that, they will make a mechanic for switching out loadouts and weaponry easily with squads, so that you can easily change the campaign you want to fight in. So if you want to fight in a early war setting or a late war setting, you can quickly switch between those modes. The last feature or improvement they mention is a new set mechanic which will allow weapon setup and transference between soldiers. They mention an example being just to easily equip new squads. As I said previously, this is all the news that they have mentioned since then, as the last post was on the 17th, so that will be all the news for Enlisted for now, so thank you for watching.